Hi, this class is for the 29th of October, September. Leora, you weren't here, so this is for you. And you need to, any questions I ask, you're going to need to email me the answers to that question before our next class, which is actually going to take place next Thursday because Tuesday, we do not have a class. Wednesday, we are going down to the lower school to help make breakfast for the fifth grade who have breakfast in the sukkah. So we started with our pasuk of the week. Here we are, v'tiftach v'tirehu et hayeled v'nei na'ar bochev v'tachmal alav v'tomer mi yaldei ha'ivriim hazeh. Here's the translation. And the boy, and she opened the ark, and she saw him, the boy, which the word there is yeled. And behold, the boy, and now the Torah uses the word na'ar there, was crying, and she had compassion on him, and she said, this one is from the Hebrew children. So do me a favor and go ahead and from that translation, get a little curious and write me four different answers, four different questions that you might have about this pasuk. Those will be, you can number those questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and when you're ready, look at these five answers and tell me if any of these answers were the same answers that you have. So you can start up here. So we can call this 5. You can write yes or no. Was this one of yours? 6. Was this one of yours? 7. Was this one of yours? 8. Was this one of yours? 9. Was this one of yours? Okay. And now let's go to some of the answers from our most famous Meforshim. And of these three, tell me, pick one of the answers or one of the questions and answers that you like best. And for question number 10, just write me a small little just explain to me why you like that answer or write a comment about that answer. Great. um, Great. So we ended class yesterday by looking at three different ways that the rabbis have kind of tools to sometimes go against the Torah, even though they are acting for the Torah. Way number one was something we discussed before you entered the class, which is basically this really interesting idea, which says if a case is too baffling for you to decide, then go before the priest and the magistrate in charge at the time. Present your problem. When they have announced to you the verdict of the case, you shall carry out the verdict that's announced to them. Basically, it's saying, listen to the judges of your time. You must act according with their instructions given to you and your ruling handed down to you. You must not stray from the verdict they announced to you, either to the right or to the left. And our commentators look at those extra words and say, why does it have to say that? This actually would have made complete sense even if I didn't say have these words right here. What are they there to teach us? Because basically, one of the fundamental ideas about how we look at Torah is when there are extra words, right? God is not a blabbermouth. The Torah is not so big. So when there are extra words, we have to ask ourselves why those extra words are there and what they're trying to teach us that we wouldn't normally have thought about before. So those extra words are kind of saying, pay attention to what is going on. So the question is, what are those extra words tell us? They tell us that actually we have to listen to the judges, even if even either to the right or the left, even if they say their left hand is their right hand, we have to actually agree with them. Right, even if their left is, if what they're saying is left and you're saying right, even if you're saying right and they're saying left, you have to agree with them. Right, that's a lot of power for the judges, but in the sense, the idea is those judges know more than we do. Right, and the second idea that we talked about yesterday was this idea of, is there a difference between doing something that is good versus not doing something that is bad? So actively being involved in something positively or not doing something negative. And so sometimes instead of kind of instead of saying like one time, another way we can go around the Torah is, well, I'm not doing that negative, but I'm just going to kind of stay passive and not do that. And that's a way I'm not really violating, I'm just not doing. And then the third phrase, eight la'asot lashem, time when it's time to act for God. Sometimes we need to hefiru Torah text. Sometimes we need to avoid or we need to go against the Torah in order to act for God. And we saw this kind of how this came up with the phrase of Boaz basically using God's name, which is kind of against the Torah, to talk to people. So using God's name to go against using God's name, how can that be good if the Torah says don't say God's name in vain? And here kind of Boaz is just kind of using it in a very nonchalant, easy way. But actually they're saying no, 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 no. Use the Torah, do this because actually getting God's name out there is a real positive. And sometimes you need to go against the Torah, which says don't use God's name in vain, and you need to kind of make God more famous in the world. Okay. Um, so one of the more famous ways of going against the Torah was actually done was actually happens or is brought up in the Talmud itself, and here's how it works. There is something called the Shemitah year, which you might know about. The Shemitah year is also called the sabbatical year, and it happens every 7 years. There's also something called the Yovel year, Jubilee year, which happens every 50 years. This is from the Torah itself. The Shemitah year happens every 7 years. And one of the rules of that Shemitah year is if you had a loan that you were supposed to pay back money to someone and you hadn't paid that money back, when the Shemitah year comes, when year 7 comes, then automatically that money that you owed is no longer owed. So imagine for a second if you borrowed $60 from someone in the years 2020 and you have 7 years, and Shemitah year is 2027. That means you've got 7 years to pay back that money. How is the person who loaned you that money going to feel loaning you money when they know they have 7 years to get back that money? And this is question number 11. Are they going to feel good about lending you money or not good about lending you money, knowing you have 7 years to pay it back? Now contrast that for a second with what if it's year 2026 and year 2027 is the Shemitah year? How are you going to feel if you're lending money to someone in the Shemitah year? Are you going to be happy or more nervous about lending that money? So that's question number 12, I think. And kind of explain why you might be nervous. Question number 13, why you might be nervous about lending money during that time. And by the way, the Torah actually understands that we are going to be nervous. A lender is going to be nervous, and it actually says protect yourself against the evil thoughts of your heart by saying the Shemitah year is coming, and you're not going to lend to people because you're afraid that they're not going to lend you back. But in all reality, people actually did stop lending as they got closer to the Shemitah year. So basically, someone stood up, and there's a famous takana, which is called the Prose Bowl. And what is the Prose Bowl? The Prose Bowl says that basically we're going to allow loans to be loaned when it's close to the Shemitah year, but don't worry, person who's loaning money, even though technically you're not going to receive the payment from the person you gave the money to, that person is still going to owe someone. Who are they going to owe? They're going to owe a third party, like a third a special group, and you, the loaner of that money, can get that money back from that group, even though it's not from that special person. So in that way, even though it went against the Torah, it's still allowed for loans to happen. And so that is kind of the famous case called the Prose Bowl of going against the Torah when they're trying to uphold the idea of a working society in general where people lend each other money. So now we are on to a Mishnah and Talmud piece about Sukkot in honor of that upcoming holiday of Sukkot. And a couple of things you need to know about that. First of all, some pre-knowledge. So according to the Torah, there is we know this about Sukkot. Sukkot is a holiday for 7 days of the week of the week. You will dwell in a sukkah. That's it. The Torah doesn't say anything else about Sukkot. So we need the Mishnah in some way to tell us more about, because we have so many questions about Sukkot. So the Mishnah that we're going to look at is going to ask us is going to start asking those questions. So, but a few things about Sukkot, just so you know. So in Israel, right, Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot lasts for 7 days. The first day of that holiday and the last day of that holiday are days that are called Moed, because they are kind of a special extra day. And on those days, most things you're not allowed to do they're kind of like Shabbat with all the restrictions, except for two things. So on Shabbat, you're not really allowed to carry outside of your house. And on Shabbat, you're not allowed to cook. However, on a Moed, on a festival day, you are allowed to carry and you're allowed to cook with an existing flame. You're not allowed to light fire, but if the fire is already existing, you're allowed to cook. So these days are called Moed or Yom Tov. The middle days are called Chol HaMoed. Why is that? Because the word Moed is a non-normal holy day. Chol means a normal non-holy day. All right. Now, two of the things specifically for our mission that you need to know is one thing you're not allowed to on Shabbat or on a Moed is climbing a tree, because you're going to break the branches, or riding on an animal. So those are two things that are not allowed on a Moed. They are allowed on Chol HaMoed, but not allowed on a Moed. So in Israel, so just look at this map, so you're going to see that in Israel, in outside of Israel, which we call the diaspora or galut, or some will call it galus, you have not 1 day of restrictions in the beginning of the holiday and end of the holiday, but 2 days of beginning. And that's probably because we have a time difference between Israel and the rest of the world. So in order to say, how do I map on my day with Israel's day, you need kind of 2 days to do it, because so if we're trying to live our days like Israel time, you need 2 days and not 1 day to do it. Just so you know, so on Moed, on Yom Tov, you would say the words of greeting, Good Yom Tov, Good Yantiv, or a Guten Moed. In the middle days, we say Moadim L'Simcha, and people respond Chagim Usmanim L'Sason. Middle days there are not many restrictions during these middle days, but the first 2 days and last 2. So actually, not in Israel, the holiday of Sukkot doesn't last just for 7 days, but lasts for 9 days, because they have these 2 extra days added to it. Okay, and now we're basically on to our Mishnah. We didn't get a chance to go over it, but please read through and give me number 14. Give me a little bit of a summary of this of the Mishnah. And question number 15 is, try to answer the question that is highlighted in yellow. Why is that the case that is kosher? Okay, and let me just go through these Hebrew words for a second. Ha'oseh sukkato, one who makes his sukkah. Kashera means kosher, means okay. Olin means go up into, and Yom Tov are one of those days. Gamal is a camel. Zehaklal means this is the general rule. All right, good luck, Lior. And you send me the answers to those questions, and you'll get all of your points for on-time points and participation points for today.